right, we're back with one more down. Today we have Chris Amill from Youngstown Cardinal Mooney, class of 1994. Chris started at Mooney under Coach Don Bucci as a defensive back and wide receiver, 92 and 93. Made all SVC as a receiver his senior year. Went on to have a great coaching career around the area and is currently in that role at Corvian Community School in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome to One More Down, Chris.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. You know, knowing you since way back those days playing for the Little Redmen, you know, we got to scrimmage y'all the one time. Remember number 32 with the duck face mask out there on the perimeter, setting the edge for George Church.
Right. Old duck cage. They don't know nothing about the duck.
Absolutely. We generally get started, you know, just kind of getting a feel for where you grew up in Youngstown and what your family dynamic is.
Yeah, I grew up on down the hill on the south side on Garfield Street, between Oak Hill and Market, right by Hillman. It would have been junior high, turned into an elementary school. But yeah, you know, just grew up down the hill on the south side. My dad was my first coach in everything: football, basketball, baseball, you name it. He coached it. Mom worked at I went to St. Pat's growing up. My mom worked at the school, so we were able to go to school there. 3 siblings. I got an older brother, Ramon, that was all SVC quarterback, defensive back at Mooney, played at Youngstown State. Got a younger brother that was a tremendous athlete, just didn't make the right choices growing up. And I got a sister that graduated from Cheney a few years after you.
I remember watching your brother run that Mooney squad right after Ray Allen graduated, and he was a tremendous safety and quarterback, did a great job for that team, and then went on to have a really good, solid career at YSU. So who was your first influence to pull you into athletics? Was it your older brother?
You know, I think it was just the street itself, you know, just growing up with, you know, a good friend, Damon Davis, lived down the street, Darren Purdue, Paul Stonework, you know, just a bunch of guys that grew up on the street. We always played outside. Probably the biggest one I would say is Derek Pixley, lived across the street from us, played at Youngstown State, tremendous football player. You know, YSU still has the Derek Pixley hit of the week, you know, probably the hardest hitting person I've ever seen play football. And, you know, and my dad actually signed us all up, you know, myself, my brothers, Derek Pixley, just the people on the street. We all went down to the Redmen one day and he said, "This is where we playing football." And we just started playing.
Now, I know you and your brother, y'all used to really be a good duo playing baseball in the Uptown Kiwanis League. You know, what pulled you away from playing baseball and going ahead with that?
You know, I played through high school. You know, I probably played until my junior or senior year. I can't remember. And just at that point started getting recruited for football and just kind of wanted to focus a little bit more on football, wanted to get faster. So I decided to run track. And then, you know, once my senior year came around and I knew where I was going, just kind of focusing on football and enjoying life, because once you're done with high school, like you don't get it back, you know, so just trying to enjoy them years before the real world hit.
Now, everybody knows about the famous concrete at St. Pat's on the playground. You know, give us some insight into those training grounds back when you were attending school there.
Oh, man, it wasn't nothing better than the playground at St. Pat's. You know, you had the guardrail. I've seen a lot of guys get hit into the guardrail on the side of the parking lot, you know, like everybody else on the south side. You know, we didn't have a bunch of footballs and gym class and things, so we just got the aluminum foil from the lunches and made balls. And, you know, Jeremy Batchelor, R.C. Jones, you know, I don't know if you know the Hamlet brothers, Jody Hamlet, Sean Hamlet, you know, just a bunch of guys, you know, that played, and DeWaylen Alexander, you know, those guys were older and they just kind of smacked us around. You know, I don't know how many times I got whooped. You know, we ain't get put on punishment too much in our days, but coming home with holes in my pants because it was hard to afford a new pair of green pants. So then we just had the big old patches over our knees from getting tackled in the parking lot because we just had holes in the pants. And So it just made you tough. Either you were going to play or you was going to be on the playground jump roping with the girls. So it was either you had to man up and get it done, or just go jump rope.
Now, I think we all have that same training ground experience, at that elementary level, playing football in the streets and in your neighborhood. And then, when you get into that little league system, it certainly forms the foundation of, what you're striving towards. Who were some of the coaches over at the Little Redmond when you first started out over there?
We had a bunch. The coach that ran the organization was Coach Wainwright. He ran it with iron fist. He was tough. But he loved on us. And that's one thing I always learned. As a young person, you could be coached hard, but we were going to be loved harder. Coach John Burrows, he's the father of Rob Anderson and John Stanford and Jeff Stanford, like all those guys. He passed away yesterday. Sam Papa, Coach Papa, Coach Frank Iconis, Coach Bankston was a big one. I feel funny even as a grown man just naming coaches by their first and last name because, when you're a coach, you're somebody special to people. Like you mean something. It's like having another father, another family member. And, you grew up in Youngstown like me. We all needed that village to keep us on the straight and narrow. So it was coaches like that. Like I said, of course, my dad, he started off as our steady quarterback in the street to be able to play football and just in the backyard and, being able to tackle and just doing all those things. So, a lot of those guys, my Uncle Angel that played at South, he was a coach. We had some good coaches, some good, hard, tough coaches.
Now, I remember that organization always being really prideful and well organized and put together because the uniforms was always crisp. The kids was always in order, and you never really heard any bad experiences when you talked about the Little Redmond. You got to follow your older brother into that Mooney pipeline, and for you, we both grew up on the South Side where you kind of have that lane going to Mooney already. Was that a done deal from the beginning, or did you have any moments where you thought you might go to your home school in the district, or was it Mooney all the way?
For my parents, it was always Mooney. For me, I actually thought about Ursuline for a little bit, only because me and my brother were so competitive. So I didn't want to go to Mooney and be known as Little Ramon. I just wanted to kind of go out and just be known as Chris. So, I remember the baseball coach from Ursuline coming to the house and sitting there talking to him and my dad and talking about stuff. But, you're bred for it, going to St. Pat's, like I said, you play for South Catholic, you're the little Cardinals, and you just kind of fed through the pipeline, and then you get a couple little cheerleaders when you're doing good in 7th, 8th grade, they're like, oh, you got to come to Mooney, you got to come to Mooney. So it was, just went on ahead and was going to Mooney. In my heart, I wanted to go to Mooney, but like I said, it was just, Ursuline was the only other school, and that was because I didn't want to be known as Little Ramon. I wanted to be Chris Amill.
Now, when you get over into Mooney, we had Chuck Marlowe on, we've had Jeremy Batchelor on. They've talked about that famed 3 block. They've talked about the long hours that you guys used to put in and preparing and trying to perfect what you guys did over there. We all know that the stack eye is the hallmark of Mooney football as far as offense goes, but it's really just an extension of the toughness that is Youngstown football and that, grinded up straight ahead style that most teams played throughout that time. When you came into Mooney, did you always start out as a receiver and a defensive back, or did you have a different position?
No, I actually played quarterback my freshman year and my sophomore year. But, when you play for Coach Bucci, you'll run through brick walls, and just playing defensive back. I got to play in some varsity games as a sophomore and as a defensive back. And, just the, things we do at practice, the interceptions and, even in those freshmen and some of the, when we play, we have freshman, sophomore, and JV games when we were younger, and when I wasn't a quarterback and we needed to throw the ball, if we were struggling catching the ball, they would put me at receiver, and just have somebody throw me the ball. And I just remember sitting in Coach Bucci's office and he gave me that Jerry Rice talk. And once, he told me I could be like Jerry Rice. Like, to me, Coach Bucci was like a god. So if he said I could be like Jerry Rice, I could be like Jerry Rice. So I was all in at the wide receiver that was right next to the tackle.
Now there was another guy that was, in that class ahead of you that kind of went through that same system. He ended up being a tight end backer. Most people might call him an offensive tackle. I'm not sure, but what's your thoughts on Andre Jackson?
That's my best friend. He's the godfather of my son. We done been through it all. The highs and the lows. Best man in each other's weddings, you name it. But he was a great player, and he was the first person I went to when they talked about moving me to tight end. Now mind you, Dre didn't play as a sophomore because they was moving him to tight end, so he didn't play, but he played it as a junior. So, going into his senior year, when I got moved there my junior year, he talked about how fun it was, and he kind of kept me together. And between Coach Bucci and Dre, I just went on ahead and I made the move, and I believed in it. The only funny part was I didn't completely buy in. It was, I'm a receiver. Like, you tell me I'm gonna catch the ball the first game, I catch a touchdown pass, and I probably don't catch another pass until the third game of the season, but I blocked like 900 plays, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, you telling me Jerry Rice? Like, I don't see Jerry Rice do this on Sundays. So it was funny, but Coach Bucci actually took me out as a tight end, but would only put me in on pass plays.
Now, I say that tongue in cheek, kidding about Andre Jackson. Certainly, he's a guy that I grew up with. Definitely have a lot of respect for. Certainly, one of the underrated athletes of our class, because really, Andre Jackson could do it all. I've seen him play quarterback. I've seen him, get the ball as a running back, get down there, play defensive line, play linebacker, had the skills, could have been a defensive back. So, when you talk about him kind of setting you up for that experience to embrace the position, it just matches everything that I know about him and what his character is as a football player. When you move up to that varsity level and you begin to assert yourself in that starting role, you're on a pretty good team that has a lot of great players on it, especially that 92 team. I believe you guys went 8-3 that year and ended up going 2 rounds into the playoffs.
Yeah, we lost to not St. Nations, but Mentor Lake Catholic. They were probably the first team that I've ever seen go 4 wide. And this was in 92. It was unheard of. So
yeah, that's that team with Joe Jurevicius on it.
Yep.
Yeah. And I did a little digging. I see that you opened that game with a nice pick there on his side.
Yeah, I had they trusted me enough to be able to guard them. So I watched them all game, and I still remember going into that game. When Batch and those guys talk about 3 block and Chuck, we practiced at YSU probably till about 11 at night, just getting ready for them because of the offense they ran. And YSU actually turned the lights off on us, and you would think most people would just leave. Practice is over, it's dark, but not Coach Bucci. He took us down into underneath the scoreboard because they had some lights, and we probably practiced another 30-40 minutes in the dark, just to get ready for that game. And I was able to follow Jared Vicious, had a pick, everything was kind of going good, and we made some adjustments for that game. And then their running back, Carmen Alakwa, most people probably never even heard of him, but he ran up and down the doggone field on us because we were so worried about the pass, and we switched up the defense, and they just kind of ran it down our throats.
Now, another one of the guys that we grew up with, and I don't want to say that he didn't get his credit, but I don't think that enough people knew how good and how talented he was Dwayne Thomas. He was the tailback for you guys that year. Certainly had a good guy in front of him and an older brother, Eddie. But there were times where he would get the ball and he was just electric with his feet. But he was also a team player because he didn't mind playing fullback and giving up his body to block. And then when he got his time to shine, he really showed out his senior year. Can you talk about him for a little bit?
Dwayne Thomas might be one of the best tailbacks I've ever seen play football. And run that stacked eye, when we talk about fullbacks now compared to what our fullback was another tailback. Like, so watching Dwayne play, even, as a sophomore and junior year at just run the ball, he hit the hole so quick, but he was just explosive, hands down. Like, if he played now, like, you would have Ohio State at the door. You would have the Kentuckys at the door. Like, he was that kind of player for sure.
Now, as that class of '93 starts to slide on, and you move up to becoming, the unquestioned leader on the team, you all get another quarterback in Asim Please. What type of bond did you all have prior to that?
Me and Seam were tight. We probably became friends in about 4th, 5th grade. We used to always laugh because even when the Seam was in high school, like, he still played in the band at halftime. I want to say up until his sophomore year. But we had a bond, from playing basketball at the playgrounds and, just football. But he was another one that was just a freakish athlete, looking at the guys, some of the guys that played ahead of us, my brother and some of those guys, Asim says it all the time. He, when the MAC school started to come around, with me playing at Kent, Dre playing at OU, he just figured MAC is, where he can play. And of course, he ended up getting a lot of Big Ten and ACC offers, but just a phenomenal athlete, football player, basketball player. I mean, you name it, he can play it. I mean, he was, and then the relationship we had on the field was just unreal. No matter what was going on, he would look over to me and he would say my name, and I knew he was throwing the ball up to me because he trusted me.
Now, Chuck Marlowe, I can't just give him all the credit because certainly the Stoops brothers, made their mark as receivers ahead of you guys. Vince Merrill certainly was a reliable target in those early parts of Coach Bucci's tenure. But for you all, it seemed like they allowed you guys to be a little bit wide open that year with that combination with you and Asim. Chuck says that you all had a 9 route tree, but there's only 3 of them that you're going to run. Can you confirm that?
That is the absolute truth. The best part was Mondays were the JV games, and we would be out there like the Rams. We was like the greatest show on turf, like all the route combinations and everything we would do. But we literally ran go routes. We had a post, we had the Z out, and you ran a delay. And that was it. Like, that was the gist of it. Just like the rest of the offense was belly power, belly option, and maybe a power outside that we ran 9,000 times at practice, but it was really just those 3 routes that, that we ran.
Well, if you got some time, I'm going to send you some information from that 1966 season. That's Coach Bucci's first year as a head coach. And you're going to be sick to your stomach with all the passing that they was doing because they was putting the rock in the air.
Yeah, I used to watch in his office. He still had the 16 millimeter, so we used to watch those games when he threw the ball all over the place, and watching the great Ted Bell and all these other people play. So I used to watch it, and he just said, he kind of got onto the Woody Hayes thing that only, it's 3 things that can happen when you throw the ball and 2 of them are bad, and so it was just a grounded pound. And like you said, it's just that Youngstown blue collar mentality. We go be tough and, just kind of, and just be rough and just fight through it all.
Now, when you look back at that time period, you ultimately end up at Kent State as a wide receiver. Do you have any wishes or second thoughts about the type of football that you grew up playing there at Mooney? Did it prepare you for that next level, in your opinion?
Oh, it more than prepared me. I remember our first double sessions and we're getting done with practice, and I just kind of laughed. Guys were talking about how hard practice was over, and I just couldn't believe it was done. It was different, but I don't have any regrets about the style of football we played, because it translates. I mean, it's playing receiver next to the tackle. It helped me understand defenses and where guys were and coverages they were playing and what to look for and what not to look for and who was blitzing and who was going where. So I mean, it definitely prepared me to play, and I just went in with a different mentality. You always get the receivers have that image, they're pretty boys, and and they just want to be flashy and they want to be cute, and just playing in the trenches. I didn't mind getting down and dirty. I don't mind getting in shoving matches, and I don't mind coming down and blocking linebackers when I need to and all that stuff, because that's what I did in high school.
So what was your pathway to Kent? And by that question, I mean, what other opportunities did you have on the table before ultimately deciding to go over to Kent and play for them?
Yeah, well, I was initially going to go to Minnesota. That was the school I was going to go to. I made the Chamber of Commerce top 33 players in Ohio, or 32 players. I can't remember what it was, but they had a banquet in Columbus. Went down to the banquet and didn't make it back early enough, I guess, to take my SAT at the time. So Minnesota just said they couldn't wait, because if I didn't pass the test, they would kind of be rushing to get somebody. So they kind of moved on, and then I was just looking and trying to see what was there. But I had a chance to play at Kansas State. I had a chance to go to Minnesota. Of course, my thing was, I would have loved to go on to OU and just play with Dre. And my senior year of high school, I was always going down with his mom, so I became close with his friends. So his friends became my friends, and of course, that's always became another option for me. But I just kind of went on to visit the Kent. They were still looking. Loved the wide receiver coach. I don't even remember the head coach's name at the time, but they, everything just sounded good. And the head coach got fired the spring of my senior year, right before spring ball, and they kind of started fresh, but they did keep the receiver coach. And Kevin Harris was there. He's another Youngstown legend. And when I went on my recruiting visit, he was there and taking me around and hanging out and just kind of doing what you do on college visits. So, that kind of helped seal the deal for me.
And in transitioning from that stack eye offense, playing in close to the ball, what type of things do you have to adjust to moving up to that Division I level and learning the terminology and the nuances of being a wide receiver in the MAC?
Yeah, I mean, the terminology kind of came easy, and I think that was just because the educational part, just from at home, just being pushed, for the whatever it was, the math, the Englishes, the sciences, studying and making sure I was always prepared for tests, quizzes, and doing all that stuff. So the terminology part was easy. I think the hardest part for me was more of just getting more precise on route running, because in my mind, I tell people all the time, I post a couple of highlights on Facebook. I call it a milling. I was a milling dudes before people start calling it like they was mossing guys. I was going up catching the ball because I just felt I was that guy. Just throw the ball up, I'm gonna go get it. I don't care who was guarding me. But I had to learn, and we probably had two of the better DBs at Kent. I know we played against one at Ohio University, but they just had the DBs. But that was just always my mentality. So I just had to really learn how to run routes, because everything wasn't gonna be play action. It wasn't gonna be belly, 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 power, 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 and then throw a bomb.
Now, I know early on, right before I left high school, they were still running triple option up there. What kind of offense were you guys running during your time?
At Kent, we were a pro style offense.
No.
Like I said, we had the new coaching staff come in. The head coach came in from Canada. Um, the offensive coordinator, he's still coaching now. He's still coaching D1 ball. So we were more pro style. Strawn Watley from Warren Harding was our tailback. He was a freshman player of the year. So I mean, we had some pieces. Just we didn't know how to win. I mean, when we won, we beat Akron. Maybe the third game of the year, we snapped the nation's longest losing streak. That was my freshman year. So just, still learning how to win games and do all that stuff. But it was more of a pro style. We ran the ball, play action, and threw the ball when we needed, and, when you talk about DBs, I got to play against Mark Heron, who was another legend from Youngstown and probably one of the best DBs, to come out of the area.
I don't know about all that, but I'm gonna let you go with your take on it. But I was on that other side, right?
Oh, I do. We would have beat y'all if we
Okay.
played too, but that's a whole nother conversation.
But on that note, and on a serious note, when it comes to Heron, we're teammates, lifelong friends. You get to play against him. Patton is at Toledo as well, and then you get to go against OU and 15, and then there's another guy that Chris
Chris Evans.
That guy. Yeah. So what is that experience like? When you're about to go down, or they're coming up to face one of your best friends and get that chance to compete against each other after having a long time friendship and bonding. But we all from Youngstown. Nobody wants to come out with the L.
Right. And that's just the Youngstown mentality. We all competitive. They came up to Kent and I wanted to beat them. Like I said, my senior year of high school, I'm down there constantly. Whether it's football games, whether it's Sibs weekend, if his mom is going down to mom's weekend, like I was just always there. So his best friends also became mine. So we all were close. And of course, back then we didn't have cell phones, so it wasn't a whole lot of trash talking because it was long distance and we didn't have the calling cards that we needed to be able to talk trash. I mean, it was cool, just to be able to play against them. Of course, we beat them, but to be able to play against them. And I think that weekend, Dre stayed in town. His mom took him back to school on Sunday. So, just got to hang out after the game. His family, my family, was a bunch of them there. And then, like I said, just being at Kent and just being around the guys I was close with and just being able to hang out for the rest of the weekend, those are the things that I probably remember most in the actual football game.
Now you end up coming back home. What are you doing when you return to Youngstown? Is football still in your blood? Are you staying close to the game, or are you just moving into the workforce?
Moved into the workforce, but I was still coaching. I was attending New Bethel Baptist Church, and we just took over the Little Braves organization. Brian Merrill became the head coach and the president of the team, and Brian was at New Bethel, and and he talked to me, so just kind of started coaching there, and it was fun. We had a lot of great guys come through, the Desmond Merrills and Ishmael Kitchen and Taylor Hill, Braylon Hurd, just a lot of different guys that came through. Vonnie Rogers for the Braves. And then from there, I went to Eagle Heights to be the junior high coach, and at that time, it was Desmond Merrill, it was Nate Burney. We had some good guys, Robert Walker, and then PJ Feckle, who I played with at Mooney at the time. When I was there, he graduated in 93 with Dre. We were friends in high school. He was the head coach, and he called and asked if I wanted to come over and coach. I know Ron Stoops reached out to Brian Merrill, about coaching, and Brian didn't want to leave the Braves, and he was like, "Nah," he said, "I ain't gonna leave, but you need to call Chris," and I talked to PJ, and from in 2002, I just started coaching at Mooney, and all those guys from the Braves and Eagle Heights, all those guys came with me.
So as you're stepping on that other side to become a coach and a teacher and then an influencer, what given that you've been in the game for more than 20 plus years at this point, when you look back at those early days, were you coaching off of instinct, or do you think you had a pretty good base up under you to teach the game and impart those concepts to your players?
Playing for Coach Bucci, I had a great base. Anybody you talk to from Mooney, 3-block was a mother. We literally ran 3-block for 2-3 hours a day. And what 3-block was, we ran everything to the right side for an hour 15 minutes. And you just ran your 4 plays, and if you were on the left side of the line, and you worked, everything was backside for that time. And then we flipped sides. So then we ran everything to the left side. So you became the front side blocking, and the right side became the back side. And we did it on that side for another hour before the second unit even went in. It was just, and Coach Bucci's favorite words were run it again, run it again, run it again, run it again. So it was, with the Braves, we had linemen pooling. And you just didn't see that in Pee Wee football. A lot of times in Pee Wee football, is whoever has the fastest guy. You pitch the ball and they just kind of outrun people. And we were running power wheel, we were running trap, and we were doing those things. And that just all came from the foundation that I had.
Now, certainly watching from afar and always following closely, what you did. Um, you you have a reputation that you crafted over the years of really being a player's coach that cares. What is that care rooted in for you in terms of wanting to see these young boys excel and reach their full potential?
Yeah, I've always said I'm a win games. I played in 7 state championships at Mooney. We won 4. So winning games, they're gonna come. And like yourself, we get together, we talk about games we won and games we lost. But my true success comes from seeing my players become successful. When I get those wedding invitations in the mail, when I see the fathers that they become, the husbands that they are, how involved in the community they are, guys going into coaching and, different things like that. Donald Delicio is a perfect example. I think his dad might have coached you guys in basketball, Bam. I'm not sure if he was there at the time. I know he coached at Cheney for a while, but just some of the things he went through. His mom passed away of breast cancer. And he was a guy. My phone was on 24/7, so it was more than football. And that's something I still preach to this day. Everything we do is more than football. It's a lifestyle. It's family. It's about bonding. And if he needed to call me at 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone was on. Because I knew he was struggling, and then to see him be the DB coach and win the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, like that's where my success comes from. Winning games, cool. Like I want to win, and I expect to win, and I'm gonna win. I don't take that away. I think when you talk about head coaches, it's like the success of your players in the future is 1, and winning is 1A, or 1B, however you want to put it. So they're both right there. So it's just being tough. It's being hard. It's expecting those good things from the guys, and just doing stuff the right way. And and like I said, with my dad and with Coach Wainwright and all these other guys growing up, it was a thing. I'm gonna coach you hard, but I'm gonna love you harder.
Now you had that rare experience of getting to coach your son and watch his career blossom and develop, and uh, you know make sure that he was doing the right things to get to that next level, and ultimately get a scholarship and play college football. What was that ride like for you? Um, Watching his development and the type of young man that he ended up turning into.
Early it was bumpy. I spent many nights on the phone with Dre and Chris and guys, because there was times I was just ready to fight him. And it's because I seen what he can do. I seen the potential. and he hadn't seen it yet, and it's probably some of the same frustrations my dad had and some of my coaches had. Is just, trying to push him. But as he got older and I started to learn, like, coach him at football, but when football's over, like, leave it at football, for, a while I was bringing it home, and, and it was always something. We would, bump heads, and, and it would always turn into more. But as he got older, like I said, I began to leave it at home, and it was only football. I mean, he was an honor roll student. I mean, CJ was great, no issues, no trouble. Um, played sports, worked hard. The same thing with my youngest Taryn. But I knew what he can do, and I just wanted to push him, hard. And that started in fourth grade. We laugh all the time, but I remember leaving a fourth grade game, and we were kind of going back and forth, and and he was upset they lost the game, and I just didn't think he played as well. The team we played, he played was a little bit bigger, and it was like a little timid. And I remember just being at a light, and he ain't want to hear it, and I was just like, well, just get out the car. Like, your mom behind me somewhere, and you can just wait for your mom and just jump in the car with her. Like, so it was like that, for a little bit. But that's just that tough love. And like I said, as he got older, it changed. And just watching him play in college, and and we were just talking about it earlier. I know, he'll be in a Hall of Fame at his school. He had an incredible football career. He got a good degree. He's working. He's in Youngstown right now, but he interviewed at some other places and looking to leave. But since he's graduated, from college, he's been in management positions because, and I think it goes back to the Mooney days, just the expectations and all that stuff. And then, of course, being at home, with myself and his mom pushing him. His mom always been, she's been in education. She's been a teacher. So he's always had that solid foundation. His grandmother was in education. My parents, they were the blue collar workers. They worked hard, and they did everything they had to do to make sure we had. And I mean, you see it, grandparents, they spoil the babies, but as he got older, it's a great relationship still. He'll come down, we'll hang out, different things. So I mean, I love the relationship we have now, but it started off rocky. But it started to flourish more his junior year, because I think he started to realize what he had and what he can do, and once he seen that, the expectations of the work ethic and all the extra stuff that I wanted from him, he just kind of began to do on his own, and that just comes with maturity and just getting older. And I guess I just didn't have the patience for it. I wanted him to do it now, but it came at the right time.
Now, certainly you guys put together a really good year over at East, right before the transition back to Cheney. You got the chance to lead my alma mater. I believe you may have been the fifth coach in the school's history at that time. If that's not exactly right, then I'm only one off. But I remember when I saw that you were selected to bring that program back. Personally, I didn't think that they could have picked a better person. And that it's because I know, who you are at the core and what you're about when it comes to young men, what you're about when it comes to football and X's and O's. So, a lot of people might gauge success as, how many wins do you have? How many losses do you have? But for me, when I'm looking at it, I want to see a coach that's the complete person. Are you developing the people first? Are you putting them in positions where they have opportunities, whether it be athletic, workforce, or just seeing themselves differently on the exit of your program than when they came into it? Certainly that's been a trademark that you've kind of put down everywhere you've been. And then you've got this unique opportunity to, come down to North Carolina, build a coaching staff with some of your closest friends, and then, bring that next crop of kids along. So can you tell me a little bit about, what the vision is there at Corvian, how that first year was for you, how it's going, and then where do you see the possibilities for that program in the future?
Yeah, Corbin's probably, I don't want to say it's going to be harder, but at home you can talk to your kids. When I was at East, that was the only school that the city had at the time, and coming from Mooney, we started to get guys that came to East. Brian Merrill was there, myself was there. We had a good coaching staff. Toby Walker, Kevin Kyler, Tamron Smith, Brian Youngblood. You can just kind of almost like the who's who, of high school sports, at that time. And, we had a great run. And to be honest, I voted against splitting the schools. I mean, splitting the team and going back to two schools. I thought we had a chance to really create something special at at East at the time. And, of course, I was outvoted, and I was fine with it because I was the head coach, and in my second year at East, we started the freshman program at Cheney, but I was still the defensive coordinator at East, and I hired a staff at Cheney, and they kind of kept everything together. But, like you said, it's just building the guys, having guys, commit to Michigan this year, and having, a player at Boston College, and, having all these other guys going, and playing some D2 ball. And Brian Douglas, whose nickname is Red, played at Cheney, and he was a Division II All-American this year. So I mean, you see the hard work and you see the success. At Corvian, I can't go out and get the guys that I want to, and it's crazy because I've only been here a year. We finished our year 5-4, which, if you ask me, it's almost like winning the Super Bowl, because out of 30 guys, we probably have 5 or 6 that play football. And we're literally going into our first game. We have our wrap-up review on Thursday night, and I asked the guys if they have any questions. And our starting middle linebacker asks, what's the difference between kick return and punt return? So, I mean, when I say we were starting from scratch, like, guys didn't know what hash marks were. When you say to line up at the top of the numbers at the bottom, like, they had no clue. When we had one off season, I came down in December. So that's the only time we had in the weight room. So we were, like, physically outmatched against a lot of teams. But like you said, the coaching staff that I had and the relationships that we developed with our players, like, they believed in what we wanted to do and what we had. And every single game we played, like, we were within a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and a lot of times it was just the physical part, they wore us down and things like that. We graduated. I think we have 4 seniors on the team, 2 that played a big amount. Everybody else were, I think we might have 5 juniors that were on the team, but everybody was pretty much sophomores and freshmen. They've completely bought in. Dre, so we're good at the good cop, bad cop. I mean, he can be intense and he can get after them, and and I can walk behind them and pick them up, and vice versa when it needs to be done. But so they know our expectations. We couldn't go to the playoffs last year because here you have to be in a conference in order to go to playoffs. So we're just getting into a conference, and the team we have and the things we're doing, I expect to make a playoff run. And the same thing, we have a couple guys with Division I offers already. We have one of our seniors is going to Hampton next year for school, and he's going to play football. So, I mean, so they're starting to see it, they've seen it from other schools, but, I'm a firm believer in they can believe it when they can touch it, and for AJ, who is Andre's son, and Chris's son, little Christian, and they've seen it because their dads did it. So they've been to college games. They've seen the experience. They know the hard work. They see what it takes. But, taking these guys to Kentucky and going on some different college visits and understanding the hard work that it takes to play at that kind of level has been eye-opening. So now that they have been places and can physically touch it, I mean, they're buying in. They're working hard, and I just expect everything that happened at Mooney, everything that happened at East, everything that happened at Cheney is going to be the same way here at Corvian, except it's going to be nicer weather and we get to have spring ball.
Now, With you having all that experience of showing kids the recruiting process, with things shifting to uncharted territory like NIL, how does that impact the decisions for the kids that you see coming up now?
I think the bigger impact is more the transfer portal than the NIL. I think the NIL kind of take care of itself. If you're that guy, teams are going to offer money to get you there. Or if you're there, teams are going to pay you. There's quite a few schools. I think Missouri might be one that the entire team gets they get an NIL deal. Like it's across the board. But I think the transfer portal is more of a bigger impact because at one point, even when we played and not long ago, you were competing against, high school players against the country, for scholarships. Well, now you're not only competing against those guys, but you're competing against backups from other schools, or if coaches get other jobs, you have starting quarterbacks, wide receivers, wherever else that are following coaches, or other schools are offering them big money, like the receiver from Pitt that went to USC, to be able to go from Pitt and go to USC, you're still going to be a first round pick, but you get to get paid $1 million, for the year you're there, that starts to affect the recruiting, and when you look at coming from up north and you look at schools like Pitt, Pitt said that they don't come down here and recruit unless the coach knows somebody. And they trust them, so they just don't come down here. So if you have a school like Pitt, and I have a player that's getting recruited by North Carolina State, and then the guys transfer from Pitt to North Carolina State, so they take those scholarships, and now Pitt's not going to offer the guys down here because they don't come this far. Like, it just makes it that much harder, and it just comes down to myself and coaches just developing those relationships and bonds with college coaches that they can trust you, and that's something that I always took pride in, being at Mooney and dealing with the recruiting and helping out at East when I was there, and doing it at Cheney, just developing those relationships, because now that I'm here, my quarterback at Kent is at North Carolina State. A guy from Mooney, Tim Beck, is at Coastal Carolina. Guys that recruited at Mooney recruited my son. They're at Wake Forest and they're at Duke. So they move around so much, but they remember the relationships that we developed. Like, it becomes a little easier for them to trust me and look at the guys that we have. And the good thing is, we're young. So, we have some time to kind of develop and get ready.
When certainly your career is not done, it's still ongoing. When you look back at all the different hats that you've worn and the phases that you've gone through over your football development, what area was the most rewarding for you in your past?
I would say Easton Cheney. It's, if you go to Mooney, at the end of the day, you go to Mooney to play football. The education you're going to get, but you go there to play football. Where at Easton Cheney, the dynamics were completely different. You're a coach, you're a mentor, you're a father figure. You got to make sure, your guys have food. And Maurice Claret was amazing when I was at Cheney. He donated money every year, and we were able to feed our football players after every single practice of double sessions. We were able to eat as a team every Thursday after school. We were able to eat every Friday after school before the game. And that was all because of him, so just them being able to experience those things and having that family-like environment, and just all the negative stereotypes, and not be like, they're not supposed to succeed. They're not supposed to do good. They're not supposed to make it. When we were growing up, Cheney, it was hard to get in. It really, our guys, if you lived on the South Side, you went to South. When South closed, you went to Wilson. Then Wilson closed, and it was Easton ran. My sister went to Cheney on the racial balance at the time, because they just needed to create opportunities for more minorities to get an education at a school like Cheney, because according to people that the other city schools weren't as good. So once we became two schools, we just always had that image of what we couldn't do, and having coaches come up to me. It used to piss me off, excuse the French, but for coaches to say like, man, I was impressed, how disciplined your guys were and all that. It's like, what do you expect? Like a bunch of like hood animals coming out here, fussing, cussing, acting crazy. Like they're kids just like the kids you have. Ours just don't have everything you got, and you've seen it during COVID, when we couldn't get into the school and we couldn't live. There's an app I got from Dev Colliver, who's now the head coach at East, and I began to run in the park and I began to work out because then you can post these videos to the team. And we had kids putting rocks in backpacks and doing pull-ups on tree branches because they didn't have memberships to the Y. They didn't have weight rooms to go to. So you seeing the disparities between the schools, which I already knew coming from Mooney and I understood it. But I think that's what I like and love the most. And I think that's where, my success, when I look back, like all the state championships and all that stuff, just the success we had at the city schools when no one expected us to win. At East, we won the conference. We beat Canfield, who was number 2 in the state. We weren't supposed to beat them. And then, they beat them this year with Seth Antrim, who's a tremendous coach at Cheney. They beat Canfield and they finished the year 10-2. And people just didn't expect those things because, we're a quote unquote city school or a public school. And at the end of the day, if you look at all the kids that went to Mooney and Urson from the city, how good will our public schools have been if we decided to go to our home schools and play? Like Mooney and Urson wouldn't have been worth a damn at the end of the day, and I think, it just kind of showed because as East got better, the Catholic schools started to struggle. Cheney got better, Urson still had some kids, but Mooney started to struggle because they started to lose those guys like the Jason Hewletts and the DJ Wallers and the Delshans and the Jawan Freemans and even my nephew that started at Mooney transferred over and played for me. So you just started to lose those guys because they seen what we were doing and they seen it, but like I said, we weren't supposed to. So I mean that's where my pride and probably my best years came from. The hardest years for sure, because like I said, you dealt with so much more outside of football. Football was a game, but what we were doing at East with Brian and what I was doing at Cheney with Seth and these other guys, it was more than football. And it was changing lifestyles and Clive Wilson, that's at Boston College. It was a point in time he was homeless. And he stayed at the rescue mission, and and I've had players stay with me because they didn't have a place to go, and it was just a sacrifice. It was a lot of work, but it was well worth it when you look back and you just see all the success now.
Well, I'm glad that you gave me the time to, pick your brain and listen to what your path and your journey has been and is still continuing to be. If you could go back and pick a moment out of your career as a player, if you had that one more down, where would that be at? Who would be the guys that you would want with you in that one more down? Could you set that scenario up?
Yeah, that one more down for me would be my junior year. With the team I had, you had Andre Jackson, you had Dwayne Merrill, Dwayne Thomas, Tim Conti and Brian Tabolas and the Franklin Knotts and PJ Fecko and just the whole momentum of the game changed. I catch a big interception, guarding Jared Vicious, and we're going for it, and it's 4th and inches, and our quarterback and center just couldn't get it right on the snap count, and we fumbled that snap, and from there, it was a dogfight, and we couldn't come out on top. I think if that one down, that one play, we get that first down, it's a different ball game, and there's no telling how far we go and what we do. And then on the flip side, as a coach, it was my son's junior year in the state game. We get a pass interference call that as you talk to referees and they say that was the one call they talk about at the beginning of the referee meeting that you don't make because the ball was tipped, so it couldn't be pass interference, and you go from 4th and 7 and we have the lead and we get to get the ball and take a knee and run a timeout to guys getting the first down and win the game. So, I mean, 2 different positions, 2 different scenarios, but that one play, if we can change that one play, my son would be he would have a state championship as a starting football player, and I would have another one as a defensive coordinator. And like I said, for Mooney, there's no telling how far we go if that one play was different.
Well, man, I would really appreciate you giving me the time. I wish you tremendous success. I'm a supporter of yours, not just in words, but in action. Anytime I get a chance to come check you out and just kind of eye what you're doing, I take it. And, I've always been impressed and satisfied with what you do as a coach, how you maneuver as a man, and the example that you set for those kids that are up under you. I know that what you guys are building down there, as long as they continue to let you guys do it your way and put those pieces in place, you're going to be successful. So, my first opportunity that I get to come down there and see that progression, I'm going to be there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And we have an incredible administration. They're letting us be. They trust what we're doing. They see the difference in the school. So they believe in what we got going, and they're trusting what we're doing in football. And I mean, I hope you do come down. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we making you proud. We as a Youngstown crew down here in Charlotte, making you guys proud at home.
Well, I got to spend some time with Chris, so he a good guy. He passed the test. I know Dre is solid. I know you solid. So I don't expect anything but the best, man. I don't expect nothing but winning culture and successful kids, successful students, man.
Yes, so make sure you tell your parents, man. I miss seeing them on Sundays for sure.
Oh, no doubt, man. They're just getting older and crazier, man.